Well, I'm talking about Europe, so I'll begin my speech with a phrase from the French Revolution. Greetings, patriots! The fact that I would be addressing the British Democratic Party AGM was a total surprise to me. Since joining the British Democratic Party in February, I've taken part in a campaign to try and elect Dr. Jim Laithwaite in White Ward in Bradford. I also took part in our general election campaign in the Doncaster North constituency, whereby we got the best vote in the country, 1,160 votes, and we beat the Liberal Democrats and the Yorkshire Party on their own turf. Having been invited to address the AGM, I had to come up with a topic to discuss or to give the speech about. So I decided to come up with a speech about the rise of nationalist anti-immigration parties right across Europe. And you can't help but to have noted that over the last couple of years. I think it largely resulted from this mass migration crisis that we're now suffering on. Angela Merkel deciding to open up the borders of Germany, a former communist, and she still was a communist when she was running Germany as a whole. She opened her borders up, 1.3 million people came into the country, and as a result of that, the country's literally become ghettoised in certain parts of that country. Sexual assaults against German women and also in some cases rape, sexual harassment has actually gone through the roof. And I think one of the regions of Germany, I forget which one, but the AfD got them to release the results. And believe you me, the people that doing these assaults, their names weren't Heinrich Müller or Gerhard Schroeder or something like that. They were virtually all foreigners. Now, what this has led to in Germany is the rise of the AfD, the Alternative for Germany Party. Now, when the AfD was first set up, it was a bit like a German version of UKIP. It was a very Eurosceptic party. It was particularly worried about the Germans having to pay for, in effect, economies in the Mediterranean area. Countries like Greece, countries like Italy, the Germans having to put their hand in the pocket. Do you remember that Greece having that terrific problem with their currency, and Germans were having to put their hands in the pocket to maintain the Greeks in the Eurozone. But from 2015-16, when Merkel opened up the borders, they became rapidly an anti-immigration party. They got taken over by people like Alice Weidel. Also, there was Bjorn Höcke from East Germany. And they got taken over by these people, and they started to speak out against the mass invasion of their country. Now, what's happened over the last few years? In 2017, at the federal election, the AfD got 12.6% of the vote. They managed to get 94 MPs elected. But it hasn't always been an upward trajectory. The AfD opposed the lockdowns. They didn't want the lockdowns during the COVID pandemic. Because that was a sort of fashionable cause at the time, the vote fell to 10.4%, and they lost. They went down to 83 seats. But by the time of the 24 European elections, their vote had started to recover again. And in this year, they got 16%, which is their highest vote so far on a national basis. Also, with the recent state elections, they got about 30.7% in Saxony. That was second to the CDU. They also were second to the SPD in Brandenburg, getting nearly 30% of the vote. And in Thuringia, they got the biggest vote by a nationalist party, where they got 32.8%, and they actually won that state election. So. And as the last gentleman said, Stephen, he said the great impact is of the young people in Germany. They're coming back to nationalism. They're beginning to realise that the mainstream parties offer them no future. They're going to be living in a predominantly Islamic country if they don't do something about it. And as we all know, Islam treats women absolutely terribly. In some cases, they can't vote. In some cases, they can't drive a car. In some of these countries, they can't even get an education. So the youngsters in that country are starting to realise that. And it was in Thuringia, they got 38% of the vote. And in Saxony, 31%. So it's young people are realising what's in store for them in the future if they don't do something. Right, okay. Now in France, the National Valley won the European elections with 31% of the vote. That was more than double what Macron got. His party got 15%, and they got 31% of the vote. So what actually happened then was Macron called a National Assembly election. That's election for the French Parliament. And the French elections are over 2 rounds. So the National Rally actually won the first round of the election. They got more than 10 million votes, got 34% of the vote. And Macron, realising this, then got into bed with the left. And what happened then is you could horse trade in the second round. So certain candidates of Macron's dropped out, and this enabled the Popular Front, the new Popular Front, which is the far left group. It's a combination of Greens, Communists, the Socialist Party, which has been on the wane for years, but they all come together because it's the only chance they've got of getting elected. So they managed to top they got the most number, although they didn't get the most number of votes on an individual basis. By combining with Macron, they managed to get the biggest number of seats, 180. I think Macron, if I could just get me figures right here, he got, Macron's secretaries got 159, and the National Rally finished third with 143. But on both occasions, they got more than 10 million votes, the National Rally. As an individual party, they got the most votes in both rounds. I think that in the second round, the first round they got 33%, in the second round they got 37%. Another encouraging thing is the growth in support amongst young people, again in France. And the RNJ, under the leadership of Jordan Bordella, now has 25,000 members. That's their youth section, 25,000 members. In Sweden, the Sweden Democrats have been in coalition with the Moderate Party since 2022. So they support them, and they keep the Swedish Social Democrats, who are into mass migration, out of power currently. But ahead of the population, Sweden actually took in more of the illegal immigrants coming into Europe in 2015 and 16 than the Germans actually did. And this led to the rise of nationalism in Sweden. They had the same consequences. In fact, Malmo in Sweden became the rape capital of Europe. So this led to the rise of the Sweden Democrats. And the effect that the Sweden Democrats have had on Sweden is that recently, for the first time in recorded history, the immigrants leaving Sweden were more than the immigrants coming in. So they're certainly having an effect there. In the Benelux countries too, we've seen the rise in nationalism, with Geert Wilders winning 23% of the vote in the 2023 election. Top of the poll there, 37 seats he got. And in just over the border in the Belgium, the Vlaams Belang actually won the European elections. They got 22.9%. Beating their conservative nationalist rivals, the New Flemish Alliance. However, in the Belgian legislative elections, it was reversed, actually. The New Flemish Alliance held on to top the poll there. The Vlaams Belang also made inroads in the recent local elections, and they got their first mayor elected in a town called Ninove, which is just a few miles outside Brussels. So they got a success there. Also, it's immigration is becoming rapidly the number one issue in Belgium, with migrant gangs beating up and humiliating Flemish teenagers, which has led to a growth in the youth wing of the Vlaams Belang, and so that's also having an impact on young people seeing what's happening to them from migrant gangs in Belgium, and they're running around, and that's helping grow the Vlaams Belang youth wing. In Switzerland, the Swiss People's Party is the largest party in the Swiss Parliament, and constantly pops opinion polls in Switzerland. Also across the Alps in Austria, we all saw what happened recently. The revival in the Freedom Party vote. We all remember the Freedom Party and New York Haider got up to about 27%. Haider, very, very charismatic man. He turned the Freedom Party around. They're getting about 5% before he came on the scene. They're actually a bit of a liberal party, but Haider said, no, we've got to start campaigning on the immigration issue. And that's what turned the corner for the Freedom Party. But they're now even polling better than that with Helmut Keckel. They're 29% of the vote, and they actually won the Austrian election. So they topped the poll and they won the Austrian election. Of course, it's going to be difficult to form a coalition. The mainstream parties, all the globalists have a globalist agenda. They support mass migration. But nonetheless, it's that if they start to lock the Freedom Party out, the chances, if they continue doing what they're doing, it's going to result in the Freedom Party getting more votes in the future. Virtually every country in Europe now has a nationalist party on the rise, bidding to close their borders and deport illegal and criminal immigrants. In Portugal in March, the general election there saw the rise of the anti-immigration Chega party, whose vote rose from 7% to 18%, so that was an improvement there. And the Vox party in Spain, their vote rose from 6.2% to 9.6% in the recent European elections. Across the Mediterranean, Italy, Giorgia Meloni topped the European election with 28.8% of the vote, while the Lega leader Matteo Salvini, one time was Italy's star anti-immigration politician, has been overshadowed a bit by Giorgia Meloni. His party took about 9% of the vote. Across the Eastern Europe, nationalism is also on the rise. Of course, for a long time, Prime Minister Viktor Orban, he's actually dominated Hungarian politics. And I remember seeing an interview with him, I think earlier in the year, in which he said, do you know how many illegal immigrants we let into Hungary? 0. So there you go. In Poland, the Law and Justice Party won 35.7% of the vote, but they're behind the liberal-centredist Civic Coalition. Poland also saw the emergence of a new nationalist group called Confederation, who polled 11.8%, so it's another group that's just recently emerged. In Scandinavia, in Denmark, a new party's come along called the Denmark Democrats. I suppose the equivalent of the British Democrats over there and the Sweden Democrats. They become the number one anti-immigration party in Denmark with 7.4% compared to the Danish People's Party, also another anti-immigration group, got 6.4%. So across Europe, nationalism growing in virtually every country. One exception, of course, is in the UK. Of course, we all know the reason for that, because we've got a bit of a roadblock at the moment with Nigel Farage. It was quite revealing that some things are starting to emerge about Farage that are quite interesting. We've recently discovered a guy called Gwaine Towler, who was speaking to the Spectator online, he on YouTube, he actually admitted that during Farage's leadership of UKIP, that if they suspected, if they've had thought people had dodgy opinions, they would actually go to Hate Not Hope, and give them names and see what they had on them. Now, I would have thought if you actually got members' names, there must be some sort of data protection, because you're not actually allowed to give people's names without their permission. And this, I find that a bit odd. Also, other things have started to emerge. I don't know if anyone was watching on last Sunday on the Camilla Tominey show on GB News, and it was very interesting. They asked, I think, the day before there'd been a march through London. I think there was a group calling itself the Unite the Kingdom. And I think Tommy Robinson had sent a message to them or something, and Camilla Tominey sort of said Tommy Robinson supporters were out in London on Saturday, and he said, well, some of them agreed with your stance on two-tier policing and all the rest of it. And she asked Richard Tice to comment. And Richard Tice came up with this strange statement. He said, "Oh, we don't have anything to do with that lot." And these were probably ordinary people. Most of them would have just been ordinary patriots like you and me. They'd probably been the people that are worried about mass migration. They're worried about the two-tier policing. They're worried about their bills, like green energy and that type of thing. They're also worried about being taxed to high heaven and then finding it difficult to survive. That's that lot. He called them that lot. And it reminded me very much of, do you remember the 2016 election in America, where Donald Trump supporters were described as deplorables by Hillary Clinton? And that, I'm just wondering, is that the way they really feel about ordinary British people on the quiet? I mean, Farage and Tice, they're two posh Tory boys just wearing a different coloured rosette. That's the truth about it. Right, well, there is but people are lucky because they've got an alternative. They've got the British Democrats. If you're worried about mass immigration, if you're worried about net zero, if you're worried about agriculture and what's happening to the farmers, this is going throughout Europe, by the way, as the last gentleman said in his speech. The AfD actually in Germany got involved in the farmers' disputes over there. I think so did Geert Wilders. So nationalist parties in Europe are taking the struggle of the farmers up. And also the important thing at the moment is many of the new nationalist leaders are ladies. Marine Le Pen in France. We've got Sarah Naffo, who's a member of the Reconquest Party. Marianne Maréchal, who actually runs her new party. She set up a new party. We've got Alice Weidel in Germany. We've also got Petra Stager, who's one of the leading members in Austria. So lot of and Eva Vladingerbroek in the Netherlands. So ladies are coming to the fore as well, which is a great sign. So why vote for parties that continually offering you the same not offering any solutions? Why continue to vote for people who don't have any answers to the problems that we're facing, and in fact run away from the problems that we're facing? Like Farage, his answer to the immigration problem is to swap the native population from people from the Middle East, from the Indian subcontinent and sub-Saharan Africa. It's one out, one in. Well, you know. Don't join that party. Join a party that wants to stop immigration completely, wants to deport illegal and criminal immigrants, and offer voluntary repatriation for all those people who feel they can't fit in with our way of life.